Yet he merely smirked, asserting her incapacity for such feats. Her indignation surged, and she cautioned him of the unforgiving nature of her celestial brethren. He derided the notion, labeling all angels as self-centered, indifferent to her fate. Confounded, she sought clarification, yet he bluntly stated her impending demise. She implored him, arguing the lack of benefit for him, to which he retorted that it indeed served his purpose. She warned him of future remorse and the impossibility of returning home. He disclosed their automatic return mechanism, piquing her curiosity about his knowledge, offering to divulge any information in exchange for her life. He dismissed the need, revealing he had already gleaned essential insights through the ordeal he inflicted upon her. He had uncovered their customs, objectives, and her role as a mere instrument in their grand design, merely serving as a navigator. Without hesitation, he executed a lethal strike to her heart, culminating her existence. An alert promptly surfaced, proclaiming his distinction as the inaugural vanquisher of an angel. This feat bestowed upon him the illustrious title of first ever angel slayer. Internally, he acknowledged his pioneering status, as the system declared his reward, the esteemed rune of slaughter. This unique rune was destined to integrate with his essence. Reflecting on his 13th quest, he recognized these accolades were reserved solely for the pioneer angel slayer, each as singular as an artifact. The title granted him a considerable advantage, doubling his stats against divine-type adversaries. The rune of slaughter, conversely, incrementally boosted his stats by 1% up to a maximum of 100%, with each adversary he defeated. This increment continued until the round's conclusion, providing him a significant strategic benefit. Amid these reflections, he pondered the celestial being's response to his newly acquired rune. Nonetheless, his primary incentive for the angel's demise was the enigmatic angel's blood. This exceptional item, accessible solely to the inaugural angel slayer, bestowed the capability to advance to the coveted Grim Reaper class, starting from level 10. He elucidated that players typically unlocked class options at level 10, with 30 varied choices. Class transition was generally attained through in-game accomplishments or precise conditions. However, there existed special items enabling unique class changes. He highlighted the rarity of class alteration items, attainable by a single individual under particular circumstances. Within the appropriate context, these exclusive classes provided by such items were superior, offering not just enhanced stats, but also multiple class transition opportunities and unique selections like skull options. This system was unparalleled, with every element meticulously optimized. Despite not yet triumphing in the final round, he was resolute in his ambition to dominate every zone. His primary goal was to rapidly advance to level 10, thereby unlocking the intriguing possibilities of class changes. The system presented him with 3 compelling choices for his subsequent action: a triple experience boost exclusive to the second round, a significant reward of 2,000 gold, or crucial insights into the next round. Faced with a pivotal decision, he selected the experience boost without hesitation. The system immediately confirmed that this bonus would be applied automatically upon his entrance into the second round. He was acutely aware of the stakes, recognizing this as a potentially pivotal opportunity to enhance his strength. Shortly thereafter, a notification marked the conclusion of the first round, revealing that all 900,514,645 survivors would imminently revert to their physical forms on Earth. Confusion prevailed as individuals grappled with the reality of their experiences, with many pondering whether others had shared this extraordinary ordeal. He observed the time on his mobile device, which indicated 5:20, signifying the length of his extraordinary journey. His companions awakened, expressing discomfort with headaches and muscular pain, and Appear inquired if he had also lost consciousness, to which he affirmed that all in attendance had shared the experience. Their dialogue explored the peculiar, dreamlike occurrences they had faced, confirming these were beyond mere figments of imagination. As they recounted the encounters with goblins and the initial round, they realized the obligation to reconvene on February 1st for the subsequent segment of this mysterious adventure. Suddenly, he noticed an unresponsive individual nearby and tried unsuccessfully to awaken them. A comrade ascertained the absence of a pulse and respiration, leading to the somber declaration of the individual's demise. This prompted speculation about the lethal consequences of the game, suggesting that only a fraction had survived. Amidst this turmoil, he was engulfed by a wave of intense feelings, his reaction encapsulated by the sentiment, "This is awesome." Young Min's introspection led him to the notion that life's challenges are universal, irrespective of personal history, and pondered the futility of lamenting life's injustices. Amidst a friend's panic about unfulfilled life experiences, another companion offered solace, acknowledging their shared adversities and posited that even in the face of mortality, they wouldn't regard their demise as unjust. Yet aspirations remained unfulfilled among them. The absence of their protagonist, last seen before unconsciousness, caught Young Min's attention, leading him to speculate on the possibility of the protagonist's failure in the initial round. Considering past defeats, his focus shifted to an individual adorned in peculiar armor, sparking curiosity about the source of such distinctive attire. This observation prompted Young Min to access his status window to glean more information. To his astonishment, Young Min's status window opened, leading his peers to check their own, surmising that these interfaces were visible only to the individual user. They pondered the applicability of their in-game attributes and possessions in the real world. Young Min decided to validate his enhanced abilities by smoothly crushing a small rock with his hand, his face alight with excitement. Concurrently, a news broadcast reported a bewildering incident at the Bozingate Pavilion in the Jongro district, where approximately 10,000 individuals abruptly lost consciousness during a bell-tolling event. Footage depicted a woman, angelic in appearance, addressing the crowd. Shortly thereafter, a spectator who identified the celestial figure met with a sudden, unexplained demise. The angel-like woman then gestured, causing around 10,000 people to faint. The journalist highlighted that this phenomenon was not isolated. occurring in 128 other nations. Despite this, public reaction on social media was largely incredulous, with many deeming the reports as fantastical or suspecting an elaborate hoax. Despite the unfolding chaos, our protagonist inwardly concedes that these occurrences signal the onset of something far more substantial, hinting at broader implications yet to unfold. The news coverage expanded, stating that approximately 520,000 of those initially affected by sleep paralysis had awakened, while the others had tragically died from cardiac arrest. The high-profile demise of celebrity Miss A in the Plaza underscored the severity of the situation, with 11% of the national population having been lost. Our protagonist contemplates that the real challenge transcends these immediate tragedies. The broadcast then shifted focus to the survivors, categorizing them as players and evaluating their count, suggesting a deeper narrative intertwined with the events. Our protagonist acknowledges the current minimal impact of players' emerging abilities in the real world, attributing it to their initial low stats. However, he foresees that as they advance in levels, they will transform into powerful entities, potentially exceeding modern military capabilities, committed to preventing global turmoil. He surmises that Earth may not endure until the 20th round. He considers establishing dominance over the players through superior strength, adopting a strategy different from his past experiences. While he contemplates potential allies and recruitment tactics, he prioritizes an imminent task. Upon returning to his apartment, he finds his habitual meal of instant noodles. Moving to another room, he observes his younger brother Young Min deeply asleep, unaffected by his absence. Young Min, a middle school third year, and our protagonist have faced drastic familial shifts after their parents' tragic demise in an accident. Our protagonist assumed the role of sole protector for his younger sibling, marking a profound transformation in their lives. Observing the scar on his brother's palm, our protagonist tenderly caressed it, signaling the end of their serene and routine existence. He proceeded to the light switch, illuminating the room and rousing ruin. With the onset of morning, our protagonist initiated the day's activities, urging his brother to rise. As the younger boy groggily checked his phone, questioning the early disturbance, our protagonist decisively removed the bedding, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. He assured his brother that an explanation would follow and stressed the necessity for prompt readiness, as their imminent departure loomed. Perplexed, Young Min, stifling a yawn, inquired about their early departure. He speculated whether our protagonist intended to observe the sunrise, suggesting he could have proceeded alone. Our protagonist, with a grave demeanor, clarified the urgency, stating the lack of leisure for sleep or rest amidst global turmoil. Young Min, puzzled, recalled our protagonist's plan to attend the New Year's ceremony, questioning the gravity of the situation. Our protagonist, turning, assured him that all would be explained en route, emphasizing the necessity of their immediate departure. Subsequently, the brothers advanced in silence along the street, with Young Min reflecting on the situation, noting our protagonist's somber expression. Our protagonist, observing his brother's confusion, addressed the lack of awareness regarding the world's current state. Expressing concern, Young Min conveyed to his brother that he felt alarmed and sought clarification on the events transpired during his slumber. Our protagonist, advancing without glancing back, suggested Young Min consult the top trending topics online. Promptly, Young Min retrieved his smartphone and accessed the latest news updates, pausing in astonishment to question their significance. As they continued their journey, our protagonist elucidated that an angel had manifested, transporting individuals to an alternate realm, rectifying the notion of abduction to that of soul transference. Skeptical about the unfolding events, Young Min inquired if his brother was also a participant in this extraordinary occurrence. Confirming his involvement, the elder sibling disclosed his survival contingent upon vanquishing 100 goblins. Through concern evident, Young Min hastened to our protagonist, inquiring about his well-being. Our protagonist, facing his brother, urged him not to fret. Young Min, impassioned, expressed his deep concern, highlighting the recent loss of their parents and the vital role our protagonist played in his life. He acknowledged our protagonist's strength, but differentiated between mental resilience and the physical act of defeating numerous foes, acknowledging our protagonist's vulnerabilities. Our protagonist, offering a warm smile, reassured his brother, understanding his concerns. He revealed that in the alternate dimension, a game-like characterization system existed, making physical prowess less critical. He assured Young Min that upon witnessing his brother's capabilities in that realm, any initial apprehensions would dissipate. Querying our protagonist's intentions, Young Min received an invitation to accompany him to uncover the truth. However, Young Min, adamant, demanded to know their destination before proceeding, halting in his tracks and seeking a candid explanation. Our protagonist, with a glance at his own wound, reflected a somber mood in his gaze. He succinctly mentioned Bandu and revealed their destination as Bandu Lair, hinting at his awareness of the adversity Young Min faced. Surprised by his brother's knowledge, Young Min inquired how our protagonist was privy to this information. Affirming his role as the elder sibling, indicated his inherent responsibility to be aware of such matters. Subtly acknowledging Young Min's desire to shield him from additional burdens, our protagonist was consumed by regret upon seeing Young Min's distressed expression, acknowledging his initial ignorance of the true events. He became aware of the dire situation a few hours after returning from his first mission. On the day Young Min encountered Bandu, Ryaman, resting in his apartment, was jolted awake by a phone call, urgently summoning him to the hospital. There, he discovered Young Min had been mercilessly assaulted and blinded by Bandu. Ryaman criticized himself for his perceived inadequacies, feeling responsible for not safeguarding his brother and yearning to extend an apology, vowing to prevent any further mockery towards Young Min. In a different scene within the city, an abandoned
hangar served as the backdrop for Bandu's tyranny. He violently attacked an individual, demanding a ransom of 200,000 and furiously assaulted the defenseless victims for their silence, questioning their defiance. Observing this brutality were three men, acknowledging Bandu's notorious ruthlessness, recognized even by counterparts from other factions, highlighting his feared status. Bandu approached the trio, labeling them as ineffective, expressing his frustration over the thwarted motorcycle purchase due to insufficient funds. He questioned them about potential money sources, allowing them a moment to devise a plan. One of the group suggested targeting our protagonist, described as tall with curly hair, prompting Bandu to recall his intention to confront him, viewing it as an auspicious beginning to the new year. The suggestion to exploit our protagonist financially gained temporary consensus, until Bandu, turning to his associates, clarified the futility of such action given our protagonist's impoverished state and dilapidated dwelling. He mentioned Young Min's lack of parental support. Living solely with Min, mid-discussion, Bandu's attention shifted abruptly, casting a fearful glance towards the entrance, sensing an unusual presence. At the entrance of the hangar, Young Min and an unknown individual appeared, causing Bandu to initially react with laughter, masking his fear. He derisively addressed Young Min, acknowledging his unexpected arrival. Bandu's outburst was interrupted as he noticed the unfamiliar figure beside Young Min. With irritation, he questioned the identity of this new companion, insinuating that Young Min sought addition Min, then revealed himself assertively as Young Min's elder sibling, casting an ominous glance at the aggressors, and subtly chastised Young Min for his earlier reticence, reminding him of a previous directive to remain silent and forbearing.
Resolved to a grim fate, Bandu signaled his minions to eliminate what he deemed as vermin. Amidst the chaos, a thug questioned Young Min about our protagonist's combat prowess while taunting him. However, his mockery was abruptly silenced by our protagonist's formidable punch, rendering him unconscious. Witnessing this, another assailant charged at our protagonist, who deftly avoided the attack with a sidestep and countered with a swift strike, propelling the attacker into the surrounding clutter, causing a tumultuous collapse. The swift incapacitation of their allies spurred the remaining thugs into a collective assault, attempting to overpower our protagonist through sheer numbers. Yet their efforts were futile as our protagonist dispatched them with precise and forceful strikes, leaving Bandu as the sole standing adversary. Unperturbed by the swift defeat of his underlings, Bandu remained defiant, facing our protagonist without evident concern. Bandu, addressing Yamin with disdain, questioned his boxing capabilities, implying they were insufficient for a real confrontation. As Bandu approached, he mocked our protagonist's acquired skills, questioning their effectiveness. Bandu, towering over Yamin, insinuated the importance of physical strength in boxing. Yamin in response referenced recent news events which only confused Bandu, leading to his enraged inquiry and an attempted punch. Our protagonist effortlessly dodged the attack, initiating a flurry of strikes, yet surprisingly, none made contact with Bandu. This anomaly led Bandu to suspect an unusual advantage on our protagonist's part. Gasping for air, Young Min was baffled by his inability to hit Bandu. It was then our protagonist, with an air of indignation, revealed a glowing blue aura around his hand, hinting at a formidable power and suggesting that knowledge of current events would dissuade Bandu from the confrontation. After proclaiming his intent, our protagonist unleashed a formidable punch directly onto Bandu's visage, demonstrating extraordinary power. Despite the forceful impact, Bandu remarkably remained upright and attempted a swift counter. To his astonishment, his fist passed through air as our protagonist seemingly vanished, reappearing behind him in an impressively brief interval. Bandu, reeling from a subsequent solid strike to his cheek, verbally disparaged our protagonist in a shaken tone, only to be shocked upon discovering a dislodged tooth in his hand. Bandu's anger escalated, threatening our protagonist with dire consequences. His attempt at another assault was notably sluggish, providing Rimin with ample opportunity to evade and subsequently secure Bandu's wrist. Our protagonist then delivered 2 decisive punches to Bandu's face, an action that left onlookers, particularly those previously victimized by Bandu, in astonished silence. Bandu, barely maintaining consciousness, glared at our protagonist with frustration, recognizing his deliberate focus on attacking the face. Convinced that a single successful strike would turn the tide, Bandu mustered all his residual energy for a final assault. However, his efforts were in vain against our protagonist, who, as a player, possessed superior abilities. With a swift motion, our protagonist neutralized Bandu's attack using his leg, then delivered a powerful kick. The force of our protagonist's strike propelled Bandu across the hangar, causing him to collide with a distant wall. Our protagonist approached Bandu, who's kneeling and trembling from the pain. Struggling to breathe, he coldly questioned Bandu's state, reflecting on the past anguish of witnessing his brother's severe beating and subsequent blindness. Determined to prevent a recurrence of such torment, our protagonist felt compelled to act decisively. He knelt beside the wounded Bandu, gripping his hand with a deceptive gentleness. Our protagonist's expression, a mix of resolution and retribution, conveyed his underlying motive for retribution, stating the cause of Bandu's current plight. In that moment, the sound of breaking bones echoed as Bandu howled in agony, staring at his crushed fingers. Min then seized Bandu's other hand, prompting Young Min to express distress, imploring our protagonist to cease his actions. Simultaneously, another outcry pierced the air, as the revived bandits hastily fled the hangar. Young Min, positioned at the entrance, could not endure the dreadful sounds and turned away, eyes tightly shut. Her protagonist, observing Bandu's tearful examination of his mangled fingers, inquired about the consequences should Bandu menace Young Min again. Through his tears, Bandu hastily vowed to refrain from harming the boy. Pleased, our protagonist acknowledged this assurance, his smile belying a mocking intent. He cautioned the necessity of reinforcing the lesson to prevent forgetfulness. Seizing Young Min's arm, another bone-crunching sound resonated, followed by a raw cry of anguish within the hangar's confines. Outside the hangar, Young Min expressed astonishment at his brother's combat prowess, questioning the source of our protagonist's remarkable fighting skills. Our protagonist, responding, hinted that Young Min had overlooked significant information in the news, revealing that players could manifest their skills in reality. Young Min, puzzled by this revelation, sought clarification. Demonstrating his point, our protagonist summoned a bright yellow light from his palm, materializing a black, sharp dagger from another dimension, astonishing Young Min with the weapon's sudden appearance. Our protagonist elucidated that he possessed the ability to summon the acquired weapon into the physical world, then discreetly returned it to his inventory. Young Min, intrigued, inquired if our protagonist's adept evasion of the attacks was also due to skills from this other realm. Our protagonist affirmed, disclosing that he had accrued 11 dexterity points, contrasting with the average human's 3 and professional athletes' 10, underscoring the extraordinary nature of his abilities as they continued their journey. As the lottery numbers commenced, the first was 3, followed by 18, then 9 and 38 as the fourth. Witnessing these, Young Min's anxiety transformed into disbelief. The complete sequence for the Nat 1049 lottery was disclosed. 318, 938 with 211 as the bonus number. Overwhelmed by astonishment, Young Min, verifying the numbers on their ticket, exclaimed their improbable victory. He turned to our protagonist, his eyes brimming with emotion, requesting a pinch to confirm reality. Our protagonist, with a bemused expression, suggested Young Min ascertain the truth himself. Questioning the reality of their situation, Young Min wondered if they were in a dream. Yin, with a hint of curiosity, posed whether Young Min preferred the scenario to be a dream, which the younger brother denied. Min, with a smile, affirmed the reality of their win, dispelling any doubts. Convinced, Young Min leapt up, elated, only to be gently cautioned by Min to moderate his excitement to avoid disturbing their neighbors. As they sat together, Min inquired about Young Min's happiness, who in turn queried our protagonist's feelings of joy. Our protagonist acknowledged his happiness, reflecting on his initial reaction to similar experiences, which had become routine over time. He explained the necessity of amassing wealth swiftly, especially in light of the turbulent economy anticipated due to the significant loss of lives. Our protagonist highlighted the impending increase in player-to-player item trading for cash as a critical future activity. Struggling to grasp the enormity of holding 100 winning lottery tickets, Young Min inquired about their potential financial gain. Our protagonist, however, found it challenging to estimate the vast sum they would receive, speculating that it might be substantial enough to impact the world. Later that day at Non-Hop Bank, our protagonist displayed no signs of anxiety. His familiarity with claiming the lottery prize had rendered the experience routine. Approaching the service counter, he confidently requested the first-place payout for the Enwa lottery, receiving a congratulatory response from the bank employee. The bank employee, scrutinizing our protagonist, was intrigued by his youthful appearance, pondering why a student would engage in lottery gambling. After verifying the details on his monitor, the employee inquired about the purchase location of the lottery ticket. Our protagonist specified the QS24 store, affiliated with Unho, which visibly astonished the employee. He recalled a recent conversation with a colleague who mentioned that an unprecedented total of 115 tickets had won, and astonishingly, 100 of those were acquired from a single outlet by presumably one individual. This revelation prompted the colleague to suggest an urgent communication with the bank's president, emphasizing that anyone claiming ticket purchases from that branch should be treated as exceptionally important clients. After a brief, apologetic interlude, the bank employee requested our protagonist to wait momentarily. Shortly thereafter, Guan Jun, the president of Non-Hop Bank, descended to the lobby. Upon arrival, he cordially greeted our protagonist with a handshake and introduced himself. In return, our protagonist shared his own introduction. Guan Jun acknowledged our protagonist's significant lottery win at Nado, extending his formal congratulations. He then suggested moving to a more secluded area for privacy and led our protagonist to the lottery ticket department. Inside, a staff member, upon noticing their entry, respectfully stood and bowed to Guan Jun. Observing Min with curiosity, she speculated about his identity, wondering if he was related to the president. Guan Jun clarified to her that our protagonist was a distinguished visitor, present to claim his lottery prize. Guan Jun instructed the employee to extend full courtesy towards our protagonist. After parting with our protagonist, he encouraged him to manage his affairs unreservedly. The employee, recognizing our protagonist as the individual who claimed the 100-ticket jackpot, aimed to maintain her composure. She respectfully greeted him and invited him to sit opposite her. Promptly inquiring about his preference for a beverage, she received his decline and noted his request to expedite the prize collection process. She complied without hesitation, asking to verify the Nat lottery tickets. Our protagonist produced the 100 tickets from his possession, presenting them to her. As she meticulously examined the tickets, astonishment took over, realizing the extent of our protagonist's achievement and pondering if he possessed foresight, given the uniformity and success of the numbers chosen. After completing her verification, the staff member confirmed that all 100 tickets were indeed winners of the first-place prize. Our protagonist, curious about the total sum, inquired about the amount of money he would receive. The employee, still in disbelief, informed him that his total winnings amounted to approximately 22.5 billion won. After taxes, our protagonist would retain about 15 billion won. With the financial gain secured, our protagonist expedited his next actions. He sought a new residence and by evening had initiated a brokerage account anticipating a significant rise in Bitcoin value. Planning to invest in Bitcoin, our protagonist aimed to further augment his newfound wealth. Subsequently, he arranged for a new housing accommodation, preparing for relocation with his brother. Prior to the move, our protagonist decided to revisit their former apartment to collect essential belongings. Our protagonist inquired whether Young Min was pleased with the images of their imminent new residence. Young Min expressed awe at the mansion's grandeur and the promising description of its locality and security. His confusion arose regarding the decision to rent instead of purchasing property, given their substantial financial windfall. Our protagonist disclosed that he had allocated merely 1 billion won for immediate use, investing the remaining 14 billion in Bitcoin, leaving Young Min perplexed. He, understanding his brother's astonishment, assured him that the investment was not reckless. He comforted Young Min, explaining that even in the event of a cryptocurrency loss, they could secure additional funds through NATO, emphasizing the strategic thought behind his financial decisions. Our protagonist shared with Young Min that he had envisioned 4 sets of numbers in a dream, which sparked excitement in Young Min, familiar with tales of prophetic lottery dreams. Eagerly, he implored his brother to retain the numbers, fearing their loss. He, overwhelmed by his brother's fervent reaction, experienced a moment of dizziness, gently requesting Young Min to ease his grip. He reassured Young Min that the numbers were etched in his memory from repeated experiences. Suggesting a change of activity, he recommended grabbing a bite before preparing for their day. Confused, Young Min queried about their plans, to which our protagonist, with a grin, revealed their immediate relocation. In a separate event, a powerful individual known as Mine demonstrated his formidable strength by demolishing a stone wall with a single punch, testing the extent of his newly enhanced physical capabilities. Mike allocated all his experience points to enhance his strength, a decision he has yet to regret. Additionally, he acquired a power rune that amplified his strength twofold, fortuitously securing an initial rune whose potency could even stir envy in someone of Mike Tyson's stature. After testing his formidable power by demolishing a wall, Mike felt an urge to validate his enhanced strength in actual combat. Hours later, he found himself at the entrance of our protagonist's apartment, persistently knocking. Despite his patience, Mike began to harbor feelings of awkwardness, puzzled by the lack of response from within, questioning the resilience of the person he sought to confront. Consumed with indignation, Mine intensified his assault on the door, fueled by the belief that our protagonist had slighted him. Convinced of our protagonist's inferiority, despite both being players, Mike was determined to impart a stern lesson. His continuous pounding on the door solidified his belief that our protagonist was deliberately avoiding a confrontation. Mike then decided to employ a deceptive tactic, loudly proclaiming his departure, hoping to provoke any sign of life from within. As he pressed his ear against the door for any sound, he was interrupted by the inquiry of an elderly man emerging from the adjacent apartment. The man, adorned with glasses, questioned Mike's intentions, disrupting his plot and adding an unexpected twist to his weight. Faced with the inquisitive elderly man, Young Min defensively questioned the relevance of the man's concern, noting that he was not the apartment owner. To his surprise, the old man adjusted his glasses and clarified that he was indeed the owner. As the man probed about Young Min's purpose, suspecting a visit to a friend, Young Min seized the opportunity to affirm his intention of meeting a friend, urging the owner to grant him access. He elaborated on his prolonged lack of communication with his friend, emphasizing the urgency of entering the apartment. The owner, expressing sympathy, suggested that Young Min's friend might have left him behind, revealing that the apartment was currently vacant as his former occupant had relocated earlier that day. Young Min, startled by this revelation, sought clarification, to which the elderly man admitted his ignorance of the former tenant's new address. This disclosure incited Young Min's frustration as he was aggrieved by the abrupt disappearance of the person he sought without any prior notification. Our protagonist and Young Min arrived at the premises of their new residence, a towering edifice that left Young Min in awe. As they exited the cab, Young Min gazed up at the structure, his disbelief palpable. Entering through the revolving doors, he expressed amazement at the security features, including passcards and guards. Young Min continued to express his wonderment, questioning the reality of their luxurious surroundings while awaiting the elevator. Ascending to the 43rd floor, they proceeded to their apartment. Inside, Young Min, overwhelmed by excitement, inquired about the size of their new home. Our protagonist nonchalantly informed him that the apartment spanned approximately 330 square meters. Young Min remarked on the spaciousness, considering their duo, to which our protagonist responded, highlighting their substantial financial resources as justification for the grandeur of their accommodation. Young Min inquired about the financial commitment for their new residence. Our protagonist disclosed that the initial deposit was $500 million, with a monthly rental of $22 million. Young Min was astounded by these figures, especially the monthly rent, recalling his recent concern over a modest expenditure at a convenience store. As our protagonist surveyed the rooms, Young Min approached, expressing his apprehension about the high costs and suggested relocating to a more economical dwelling. Our protagonist, however, clarified the necessity of the expense, emphasizing the paramount importance of security. He explained that on the first of each month, players enter a vulnerable state due to comas, exposing them to potential hazards like fires, earthquakes, or attacks by adversaries. The high rent was justified by the enhanced security measures essential for protecting players during these critical periods. Our protagonist stressed that survival in the real world was crucial, irrespective of one's prowess in alternate realms. Upon setting down his bag, Young Min was queried by our protagonist about his feelings toward their new home. Young Min affirmed his contentment, which elicited a somber reaction from our protagonist. Observing his brother's melancholy, Young Min felt a pang of guilt. Our protagonist, with a heavy heart, reflected on the impending separation due to his return to the combative realm, contrasting with Young Min's peaceful life here. This thought made him apologize for his perceived selfishness. During this exchange, our protagonist approached Young Min, offering a comforting gesture on his shoulder, questioning the source of his brother's gloom. He reassured Young Min of his return from the next combat cycle. Attempting to lighten the mood, he proposed a dine out, recommending a notable Korean restaurant located on the second floor of their building, diverting the conversation to a more uplifting topic. As he was about to leave the apartment, his phone rang. Recognizing the caller, he surmised that Young Min had discovered his relocation. Opting to disregard the call, he considered the slim probability of their real-world paths crossing again, though acknowledging potential encounters in the alternate realm. The following morning, he emerged from his room yawning to find Young Min ready in the living room, briefcase in hand, inquiring about his brother's plans. He learned that Young Min was on his way to collect a rice cake he had ordered. This revelation left him bewildered, as he could not recall any prior instance of young Min buying Rice cake in the morning. Reflecting on the variability inherent in time regression, he pondered the novelty of this event, considering whether this was the first occurrence of such an errand. He pondered the reason behind the purchase of a rice cake, leading young Min to explain that it was a gesture of goodwill towards their new neighbors, a mark of good etiquette. He, upon reflection, recognized the merit in fostering positive relations with the neighbors, appreciating his brother's thoughtful initiative. Young Min, ready to leave with his messenger bag, offered to fetch the rice cake solo, suggesting our protagonist relax at home. Contrarily, he proposed that they should jointly introduce themselves to the neighbors. Consequently, they proceeded to purchase the rice cake together. Upon returning to their building, they made their way to the neighbor's apartment to extend greetings and share the treat. A woman's voice inquired from the speaker about their identity. Our protagonist, with a friendly tone, introduced themselves as the new neighbors. The door was opened by a woman who greeted them with a smile, remarking on the brothers' resemblance and guessing their twin status, which young Min confirmed. He then presented a warm rice cake to her, receiving thanks and a promise of enjoyment from the neighbor. Continuing their introductions, the brothers visited another apartment, informing the resident of their recent move to apartment 4302. Upon the door's opening, young Min offered the rice cake, maintaining a friendly demeanor. They proceeded to distribute gifts to various neighbors, including an elderly woman, gradually acquainting themselves with the community. Feeling fatigued, young Min, while entering the elevator, expressed a desire to conclude their introductions promptly. Our protagonist mentioned that they were approaching the penthouse, an expansive space encompassing the 44th and 45th floors, leading young Min to comment on the affluence of the residents there. While attempting to contact the final apartment, he speculated about the occupants, suggesting they might be either celebrities or a wealthy family. However, no response came from the apartment, leading young Min to assume it was unoccupied. Despite a second attempt to call, the lack of answer reinforced their belief that the apartment was empty. Pondering their next move, young Min was about to propose returning to their own apartment when he noticed an unexpected sight behind our protagonist. Young Min, holding a rice cake, was startled to see a group approaching. Among them, he recognized the renowned actress Cyan, whose beauty he likened to that of an angel. Suddenly, a bodyguard stepped forward, obstructing their view and inquiring about their identity, suspecting them to be fans. Our protagonist clarified their status as neighbors from a lower floor. Approaching the bewildered bodyguard, young Min offered the rice cake. The bodyguard, realizing his mistake, acknowledged the misunderstanding. Young Min then extended the offer of the rice cake to the penthouse residents, but the bodyguard, referring to someone named Aaron, declined, stating his disinterest in such treats. He then proceeded to unlock the penthouse door with a passcard, ushering the actress inside while she cast a contemplative look back at the brothers. Our protagonist expressed frustration over the dismissive encounter as the penthouse door shut. He noticed young Min, who seemed captivated by the recent interaction, and suggested they move past the incident. Holding the rice cake, young Min assured he was unbothered. Then his expression brightened as he turned to Min, who, incredulous that his brother appeared unfazed by their brush with fame. Excitedly, young Min clarified that they had encountered the famous Cyan, bewildering our protagonist who was unfamiliar with the celebrity. Concurrently, the media was abuzz with reports of sudden fatalities among well-known personalities, particularly heart attack incidents within the celebrity circle. Aaron, seated in her penthouse living room, perused the news with a heavy heart, pondering the world's unchanging pace amidst recent turmoil. Her contemplation was interrupted by a text from Hong Song inquiring if she had heard about Gong Sojun's death.